Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall on the New Bedford Cable Network, and his turn in the rotation, State Representative Chris Markey of the 9th Bristol District. Good seeing you again.
Nice seeing you.
Summer's right around the corner.
It is.
Good time of year to be here in the neighborhood, that's for sure.
It is. When the weather's getting like this, it's much better, and the days are getting longer, so it's good.
Absolutely. Lots of things going on, I know, for you and on Beacon Hill right now. I just kind of just update us right now as to where I guess things are as far as offices and the State House and all that right now. Still doing things from Zoom and remotely.
So a few things. One is we're in a session now, which is, I think it's the 197th, 6th or 7th or something to that effect. But we started up in January, a new session, and it's still remote, using our phones to vote. What we end up really pretty much doing is using our phones to vote and listen live. We also have it on the computer. We got the amendments sent to us, all those things. So when there is debate, we're aware of what's going on. As far as a lot of committee hearings, a lot of it's remote. It's going all right. Still miss the camaraderie between the people from around the state.
There's probably a few new people too, because the elections last year, so you probably personally haven't met people yet.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm looking on the computer to see their picture to have a sense of who they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, even the last term, we ended up really not doing anything up there as of March of last year, and everything went remote. So I didn't get a chance to really even develop relationships with the individuals who were there the session before.
Right. So the State House is still closed, though, right, to the public?
It is.
Are staff and officials?
Some staff are going back. They're trying to promote not going back yet until they figure out everything, and then obviously things have changed, so offices will change and things like that. But that will all take place over the next, I would think, this summer, and it might probably be September 1st, October 1st. We're back up there on a full-time basis.
Do you think that, I guess generalizing, state government, because I've read, businesses, and I mean the way businesses are run or going to be run after this is back. I mean, there's people that aren't going to go back to work. Do you think that'll be like that in government? And I'm not talking just the state. I'm just talking in general.
Definitely, I think there's definitely going to be things that we do differently. I think a lot of the ideas of people who are doing things that are on the phone all the time, they may be going into the office less. I think that there are the establishment of a real technology for the state website and all of that. And I think that the governor, other than the one hiccup at the beginning of the vaccine, but that was, I think, could be somewhat expected. The technology has done very well. The website has done great. It's informed people. It has lots of links that can help people. I see that as being kind of the way in which we do things. I think the RMV is one way. It's going to have to make some adjustments and prioritize what can be done remotely and what cannot be done remotely. So I definitely think it will change.
Because government is one of those, for lack of a better word, industries where face-to-face or one-on-one is so important in a lot of cases, many cases.
It is, but there's also this other side of it where they're troubleshooting, and you look at even now the bank. Like I go to Baycoast and I can go to the automated teller where I talk on the phone and I see their picture. They're at their house. There are things that Department of Revenue can be more remote. Probably DEP, some of the things that they can do can be remote, although they're spread out in different regions, which is helpful. But I do see that there will be a change in the way in which we do a lot of things. I think the commercial real estate business in Boston could suffer.
Well, businesses too.
Yeah, I mean they're just going to relocate people and have less space. So either the market's going to go down, I would think, over the next decade. Obviously, these long-term leases that people have in the Prudential Building or the Hancock Tower or wherever, or the new Seaport. The question is how do we use those, the resources that, or the infrastructure that's there to help the businesses?
Are there a lot of government offices that aren't in government, in a sense, buildings, that they're just in?
Yeah. Example is DEP is in Lakeville.
Right.
Right off of 495 at 105, I think it is. So it's there. It's a beautiful office. The district attorney's office in Fall River is the next building over from the courthouse. So there's throughout, the DOR is in the same building, Department of Revenue in Fall River on South Main Street. The Secretary of State's office is in the same building on South Main Street. So there are non-governmentally owned businesses or buildings that support the government agencies.
Right. Sort of speaking with that too, I know that the House is talking about the budget, and it's roughly $47 billion. But when you look at the budget overall, and I know you guys have just started the process, but I would assume that there are adjustments in there that take into consideration what you're kind of talking about, COVID and some of the changes or some of the things that you're talking about.
I don't know if we necessarily have done that yet. It's a part of it. I mean, our big thing is we have a lot of funding from the federal government, and that has helped us this year, and it will help us next year, and it will help us even the year after, but the year after that is going to be troubling. And that's what we really need to try to figure out, is how we can plan for the years when the federal money isn't there. And that's, I think, concerns of municipalities, school departments in particular, how we're going to function. But I think that this pandemic has given us all an opportunity to at least take stock in where we are, take stock in how we can make changes that are in a positive way. But it also, I think, gives us time to reflect on what's really a priority. One of the best parts of the pandemic has been actually having the first 3-4 months was every night having dinner with my kids, all of us together. That hadn't happened in a decade, just because of sports and everything, every other activity there is, and the job and everything else that routinely. And it just reminded me of me growing up in the 70s, where, at 5:30 everyone was out of the neighborhood in their houses, and then at 6:30 everyone came back out and played. Right. But we played up till 5:30, and we went back out at 6:30, and that was pretty much it. And our universe was small. That's what pretty much happened to us in March, April, May of last year. So that was kind of a good thing to see as well.
We saw the best in people too, especially in the start. I mean, just people helping other people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said to have that community aspect, and that's, I mean, it sounds corny, but even the founding fathers figured it out, right? We have the representatives, and then we have the Senate, right? And the representatives are more closely connected with the people because it's a smaller group. And the Senate has a much more kind of, I'd say it is a more general rule of law. They're concerned about the whole Commonwealth or bigger areas. For example, the farming community of South Dartmouth is a lot different than the urban areas that I represent in New Bedford.
Right.
But, Marion and Mattapoisett, it's a lot different for Senator Montigny than it is in New Bedford and the concerns. So they have a bigger perspective of things. I'm lucky to have it. Tony Cabral has just New Bedford, so his concerns are just that, and they have a real connection with him. So I like my district just because it's a good balance.
Right.
But you got to be aware of those things. So I think you're right. I think that this has developed our community as a whole in helping each other.
I would assume that just learning about this too is the infrastructure of the state. I'm talking Wi-Fi and all that, the infrastructure now, the importance of that, and security has got to be a huge concern going forward too, even more than it was.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the Colonial pipeline is one issue, but it's definitely a concern. And now that more and more people are relying upon that connection.
There's probably more information going through than there ever was.
Oh, without a
this.
doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, I actually had a conversation with someone who had not a business guy who'd never done a Zoom all year. I'm like, how do you survive? Because I'm just using my phone all the time, and I meet people in parking lots and outside places and talk, and so it was kind of interesting. But I don't know many people who have not used Zoom over the course of the last 15 months.
Talk to us a little bit about as far as we talked about sort of one of the issues coming up is like the gig economy and unemployment, trying to extend that. There's still some issues out there that have to be addressed, because you were kind of alluding to that for the next couple of years. So there's sort of the immediate issues, and then there's, like you were saying, some of the long-term stuff, because that federal money's not going to be there. What are a couple of things that you look at right now, or that really the legislature has to address immediately, but then the long-term aspects?
I think education is one of those things, and I think transportation is another one. There are less people going into Boston, but the traffic's staying the same. And the reason why is less people are using public transportation right now because of the pandemic. So you got less people going in, same amount of cars, because the people aren't using the transportation.
Right. They're not carpooling either.
Yeah. So we need to work on that. Education, I think, we need to really work on what worked this past year and what didn't. For example, snow days. I mean, basically, snow days shouldn't exist anymore in reality, right? I mean, so do we alter the school schedule? Do we alter the way in which we do things? This is that opportunity to do that, and maybe really reflect again, like I talked about earlier, is taking stock in where we are. Can there be 4 days a week of in-school learning and 1 day outside? Do those things work in particular environments? Do they work better in high schools than they do in elementary schools? Colleges are the same way. Like, we really got to figure out a way in which we can educate people at a lower cost. And
people don't understand too how many state colleges and universities are out there. There's quite a few.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And community colleges as well.
Yep. So I think that it's going to be an interesting couple of years to see creative ways of doing things.
And access to, and kind of what you were alluding to too, as far as, I mean, the urban access to Wi-Fi and what have you. I know that was a challenge in New Bedford that you had talked about before, versus, and probably in Dartmouth, there's questions of access too. Kids need to have that access to be able to go online to do the work.
Yeah, definitely.
And reliability as well.
Yeah, that's a definite thing. I have buddies of mine up at the State House who they don't have Wi-Fi. I mean, they don't have broadband in parts of Massachusetts, so they have to dial up. I mean, how do you dial up? Remember back in the late 90s up around here, you'd sit there and you hear the noise and it round around. That's all they have out there.
Oh, something that's what, Western Mass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, we have to make sure that is developed. And, Governor Patrick started, Governor Baker has really pushed it through. And I think there's a very few towns now that have that issue, but they're still out there. So yeah, definitely access to those types of things, but also finding ways to be creative in teaching. I think it's an opportunity for us really to find ways, particularly the high school level where kids are older and definitely tech savvy, that there's ways to do things that are a little bit different that teachers could do.
And it's funny because I know obviously you have kids in high school. I have one in high school. And they seem pretty psyched, actually, at least mine, to go back actually to school.
Well, my son was dying to go.
But there are other kids who they're fine doing it remote, and I don't know if that's well. First of all, I don't know if you're getting the same education in person versus remotely. But I mean, there's some, like you said, benefits to the remote learning too.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's going to be a factor in their lives, right? Where they are going to have to deal with Zoom when they get older. Let's start with the education of how to deal with it. Just simple protocols, politeness, how to deal with people on those situations. All of that stuff, again, is the basis in creating a foundation to our education system so that our kids can be productive citizens. I mean, I keep
And it's
saying,
and that's too. The in-person learning is important too, because you got to learn how to deal with people.
yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, I know my kids could not wait to get back to school. They wanted to be able to see all their buddies.
Right.
They wanted to see people
Even the
in the
teachers, though.
hallways. Yeah, the
You know,
teachers.
they have their favorite teachers.
Yeah, and I think this year, I mean, our kids went to a school where they had every other day, and it was great. But I think my children's relationships with their teachers grew so much more in the last year. They have real conversations about real life experiences, and it's not it's almost like they're peers, especially my oldest son. His relationship with his teachers they have real conversations about real topics of the day, and it's nice to see that.
And it's different in college too. Having a daughter in college is interesting because it's not the same college experience that most kids have. I mean, it's okay, but you know, she's dealing with everything Zoom right now, and I know, we know people whose kids are at school and they're not having the same college experience.
Yeah, I got a daughter who's going to be a senior in college, and I got one who just graduated last year and had her first year of grad school. So, and her senior year was interrupted at the end by this, and then my daughter is a nursing student, and that altered the way in which she could do it. She wanted to go a semester abroad and wasn't able to do that.
Right.
That's one thing, but also the idea of going to the hospitals, how she had to prepare for that, to be in the hospitals, to do the nursing and to do all those things, was a lot different. And again, it was a great learning experience for her, but it's definitely different from the traditional college experience.
Right. What do you think, as far as businesses, is there anything business-wise that you think the legislature, I'm just throwing out outdoor dining, is that a local thing that should be dealt with, or should the state say, hey, we've got to look at that?
I think we need to really look at that. If there's one thing that I think we should really consider looking at is the restaurant ABCC stuff and all of that. I mean, I think personally that it's a great idea to have some of these streets blocked off, even in the best of times with no pandemic or anything, for restaurants to have places to sit outside. People want to go outside in the summertime and do that. People say, oh, well, it's giving up parking spaces. Well, I bet you the revenues created by the surcharge sales tax of 1.25% for every meal that comes back to the city outweighs the quarter you put into the machine for the 20 minutes or whatever it is. But over the course of time, they're gonna raise more money if they can block off a couple of parking spots. And in my building, in my law office, Cafe Italia is downstairs, and that guy has worked his tail off. It's great food. He works hard. He set up a place on Market Street, which is about 3 or 4 spots. It's got umbrellas, but he's out there working his tail off to make sure that happens. And I think if he's made this investment, there's probably a good investment into that, a few $1,000s. He should get that return, and the city and the state should assist them in making sure that there's a return there. And I think it has to happen over the next few years.
I guess overall, do you think the economy is doing okay? Are you optimistic about it? This area is such a tourism area as well. I mean, it's important to have a lot of visitors, day trippers, coming to New Bedford and Dartmouth and what have you. Oh,
I think that the economy is doing very well now. My concern always is a year from now what happens. For the chip stuff regarding the car, the unavailability of these microchips, it's happening everywhere. The cost of construction is immense. Those things should be concerning to us and keep an eye on. And we can say right now that okay, it's temporary because it's only the pandemic, and the supply chain is messed up because the supply, whether it be the Suez Canal blockage, or whether it be that a lot of the manufacturers are focused on COVID-related manufacturing as opposed to other. Those are things that, it could be temporary, but we need to keep an eye on that and make sure we focus on keeping that inflation down, because I think it could just delay an uptick in the economy.
One of the things that I wanted to touch base to, something that you've talked about, but the federal approval for Vineyard Wind. I know the state has been very active. Obviously, the city, the mayor, there's a lot of good news about that and importance to the city long term. But that's the first project, I guess, and there's hopefully more. And the state's really trying to get more wind business in.
So, if we look at it, the reality of the situation, in the 90s, we talked about climate change, we talked about these things, and they were not popular. They really weren't that accepted. They're not, politically, they were kind of the outcasts. And it's moved towards not only the middle, but even to the right. People are believing that. So we are going to have policies that focus on renewable energies, whether it be solar or whether it be offshore wind. And if we're going to have those policies in the future, we need an infrastructure that's able to do that. And the way we create those infrastructures is through subsidies towards those types of businesses, so that the seed money can come from the government, and then we can benefit for decades to come from the profits of the offshore wind and jobs created and taxes created, but more importantly, give people the opportunity to have an income and have a house. And so those things need to have seed money, and I think we've done a great job with the credits for those businesses. But people can be the objection to it, and the naysayers. But ultimately, the offshore wind will create an atmosphere of an economy that is similar to the fossil fuel economy of Houston, Corpus Christi, all the way up to Louisiana, into the panhandle of Florida, in which billions of dollars are invested in it for fossil fuels and drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a different resource, but the value of that resource is the same off of Long Island, off of Block Island, so we need to invest in that through the technology that's developed and made it profitable for wind to actually work and create energy for us.
Is it a tough sell? Because, and I'm just, the people of Western Mass, they don't have offshore wind. Is it a tough sell to try to convince colleagues of the importance of that?
Yeah, but they don't want a pipeline through the western part of Massachusetts either. So they have to have a choice. So and the idea is that this is truly an opportunity that is really once in a century, and we need to take advantage of it. So our hope is like one of the other things is solar. There's solar projects all around the Commonwealth that are waiting for upgrades on the grid. The grid can't accept the power coming from these incredibly efficient solar farms. So, us as a legislator, we need to put pressure on the utility companies to make sure that the upgrades are affordable and the upgrades are getting done in a quick time, because otherwise we lose those opportunities. Solar farms lose those opportunities, and they're going to go somewhere else. And I think they're a great opportunity for great renewable energy, and that they're going to work. Just like the offshore wind, but it's just a matter of short growing pains to get to that point. And I just see the excitement that is occurring around here. We're already establishing Bristol Community College is doing classes related to offshore wind. UMass has got that. We got SMass right down the street here, next door. Those things are huge for us to have an infrastructure of personnel, human capital that can take care of those things. We obviously have a great infrastructure with our beautiful harbor to be able to handle that.
I was going to say the Marine Commerce Terminal and actually State Pier, two places that are state facilities that are going to be used extensively for the industry.
Yeah. So we have all of that stuff available. We just need the human capital to take advantage of it. And I see the investments we're making in the education system, Dr. Douglas at Bristol Community College, hopefully a new chancellor at UMass will see the importance of that as well.
Got a couple minutes left. Just want to touch base with you. I mean, obviously these are all sort of big statewide issues. What are some of the things that you're looking at right now, just as far as district-wide? Anything in particular?
I mean, top of my list in the district is the Bliss Corner cleanup.
We've talked about that before, too.
It is one of the more heart-wrenching concerns I've had since really in my adult life, where I know that people have invested their heart and soul and their money into their home, and then to find out in the last 2 years that there is contaminated soil in their neighborhood, some of it significant on their property.
So what's the status right now? I know the DEP was obviously involved, and you were trying to...
We've coordinated very well, I think, with Senator Montigny's office, but also Congressman Keating and Senator Markey's office at the federal level. We got EPA talking with DEP. Notices have gone out. It's not going to be good for the town of Dartmouth. It's not going to be good for the city of New Bedford, because it appears that they may be the ones who are responsible for this. And the cleanup will be costly. So I'm been from the get-go talking with Congressman Keating and talking with Senator Markey's office to really find resources from all different parts of government to be able to make that happen. We're hoping to have, hopefully by the end of June, we're going to have another public meeting, which will probably be on Zoom, but we're going to have something to report back.
Is there, because I guess my understanding is it's widespread, but the source, it's not like a contaminated site where it was a business that dumped everything. This is was a dump, right?
Yeah, so it's not like, it's a lot different than, say, the the Parker Street
Correct.
cleanup,
That's
where
what I
it's
guess, yeah.
contained,
Mhm.
right? It's all pretty close, right next to each other. It's all right there. This is spread out because it was kind of like a swampy land back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and the town and the city were encouraging people to fill it in. It took care of some health issues with bugs and mosquitoes and disease that could occur from that, but the consequences of it weren't known back then. So
you're talking almost 100 years later.
Yeah, well, yeah, 60, 70
Yeah.
years later. But so the homes were built there, and it's pretty widespread. But the benefit of it is it's not deep. If there is one benefit to it, it can go anywhere from like 18 inches down to 2 or 3 feet down. But you're still removing that type of soil, and so it's not as bad, depth-wise, but it is spread out. And again, depending on what got dumped in what area, depends on what is on a particular piece of property. So there's a wide range of metals that are there, but it's going to be doable, but it's a matter of getting everyone together. And I think the town, the state, and the feds, we've done a good job of at least communicating with ourselves, and we do, the people in the neighborhood deserve a little open meeting to discuss some of what's going on and where we see the future going.
Sounds good. Keep us updated. It's good seeing you again.
Nice seeing you.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall, the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.